the following direction: 5 speakers from the majority side, 5 speakers from the minority side. Each speaker will be allocated 3 minutes. Thereafter, the mover will be called upon to reply in 5 minutes, and thereafter the question shall be put. Is that all right? Jane Kagiri. You have 3 minutes, so you must compose your thoughts properly and give your message in the most succinct manner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to support the formation of a dialogue committee in this Parliament. Honorable Speaker, I stand to thank the leadership of this country for the wisdom that it took to create this committee. Honorable Speaker, we all know the country has been in agony. We've had a prolonged electioneering period, and Honorable Speaker, the country needs to move on. Most importantly, Honorable Speaker, I'm supporting with reservations because I believe this great committee that was created should know their noble and most important task is to give us a long-lasting solution. Honorable Speaker, the IEBC spent a whopping 44 billion on the most free, most fair, and most credible election. After the election, there was an uproar and a petition in court. Honorable Speaker, it was ruled, and we have continued to have agony and violence in this country. Honorable Speaker, we appreciate that now we are having a situation of national unity and stability where business people can go about doing their business without worrying if there will be demonstrations called the following week or after. Honorable Speaker, we are hoping to achieve a lasting solution whereby the committee should let us know that in future elections, we should not have anybody filing a petition or going to the roads with violence, because we will find a solution that will be lasting for this country and that will ensure never again is the country held through impunity, ransom, grandstanding, or even intimidation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support and I wish the team all the best in their delivery. Thank you.
And she's taken 2.5 minutes. Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by just saying that it's one of those rare moments where the minority and majority are totally in agreement that we need to talk to each other and not at each other, that we need to bring the temperatures down for the sake of this country. And Mr. Speaker, I want to just say that for all of us who are in this house, irrespective of which side of the political divide that you are serving, you must note that what we are looking for is a lasting solution. Mr. Speaker, those that are in opposition today will likely to be in government in the future. And those that are in government are also possibly likely to be in the opposition. So this is a give and take situation where we must all be very fair to each other. Mr. Speaker, the comments that we make as a house and as leaders is what has brought us to where we are. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that we learn to be careful with the words that we use when we speak to each other. Every time we have an election, Mr. Speaker, there's always an issue of us versus them. Yet we are of the same country. It is very unfortunate because I have been in this country long enough to note that at one time there was even a situation where it was 42 tribes against one. I know that we had a situation where there was those that have, those are called, I think, dynasties versus hustlers. There's a situation we've had where people are talking about those that have shares and those that do not have. Mr. Speaker, as leaders, we must be very, very, very careful the things that we say, because it is out of those words that we end up with a country that is polarized, that is divided almost down right in the middle. Mr. Speaker, I want to just say this, that when we do these talks, the outcome of these talks must be people-centered, because we are here representing those people that put us in this house. So we must be careful that we do not go and deliberate and talk about positions which were actually raised as an issue, as an agenda during the last elections. We must be careful not to spend too much time talking about the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, talking about the offices of leaders of opposition. Let us deal with those matters that affect the people. Cost of living, respect of human rights, and those are the things that, Mr. Speaker, will help us move on as a country. Because if we don't address those issues, Kenyans will still be watching us, and Kenyans will still be asking questions. So we must make sure that at the end of it all of us are actually feeling that we belong to this country. I support the team. I think it has the right leadership. It has the right, very capable leaders. My party leader is a renowned peacemaker, and I'm very happy when he's there, because I'm certain that by the time the dust settles, Kenya will have found a solution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion that talks or diplomacy is always key in solving not only national issues but also international issues, and we have to give diplomacy an opportunity to resolve some of the issues which have been taking our country backwards. Mr. Speaker, the issue of mistrust of electoral outcome after every 5 years, an issue which has bothered this country for some time now, and it's an issue which can be properly addressed by ensuring that we enact proper election laws which will ensure proper automation of nomination process as well as starting process, result declaring process, which can be done within a single day, so that the anxiety of waiting for a result can be a thing of the past, Mr. Speaker. I know these are some of the opinions which will be forwarded to this team, and we will be able to retreat back to this House and consider some of these opinions from different quarters. Mr. Speaker, I have seen that in the motion number 13, it will be welcoming, inviting to engage different submissions from different stakeholders and experts and professionals. I know, Mr. Speaker, there has been a cry from my friend here, Kamket, on forming, I think, different counties or more counties. And if that's the route which is going to take in in the process of these talks, Mr. Speaker, we might also see myself saying that I need a county called Bere County. So that also we have very inclusive country. Mr. Speaker, I support this, and we will not only ensure we have proper automation of election laws or procedures, Mr. Speaker, and even we change the definition of what a ballot paper is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mark Twain defines patriotism as supporting your country all the time and the government when it deserves it. Mr. Speaker, it behoves us as a people to ensure that this country is always viable, running well as a going concern, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honorable Raila Odinga and His Excellency President William RUTO for being adults in the House and accepting that we must talk to keep this country going forward, Mr. Speaker. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Wandai and the Honorable Ichung'wa. Mr. Speaker, if these talks were held outside the framework of this House, we'll have lost this institution, Mr. Speaker. It's part of building parliamentary institution, and I hope that in these talks, Honorable Ichung'wa and Honorable Wandai will ensure that we keep building our institutions, this parliament, IEBC, the judiciary. Building trust, Mr. Speaker, means accepting decisions made by the bodies we've set up. Building decisions, it means accepting judicial decisions. It means accepting parliamentary decisions. It means accepting IEBC decisions. It means that we will build institutions and not build a country based on individuals. And that's what I want to say, Mr. Speaker, to the leadership of this committee. The report should not be the leadership of that appointed them. You cannot report to Raila and RUTO only. You will report to this parliament. Because even the two of them can mislead us sometimes, can mislead us. The report you're going to make should be to this House, not to individuals. because this country doesn't belong to the two of them alone. So we want to request that you work, don't only take orders from the two of them, take orders from the public. Kenyans that appointed you, and that's why you've said in that particular motion that you'll be allowed to take views, petitions from anywhere that you may get, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's adopt the position that as a country, we are always in this together. It's a better philosophy than you are on your own, or that everyone for himself and God for us all, Mr. Speaker. I challenge you to ensure that you address issues like corruption, inequality, incompetence, unemployment, things that would make this country move forward. Mr. Speaker, as I end, and request you also, Kofi Annan said that one of the things that messed up the talks in 2008 was that people were squabbling over small things like seating arrangements, who will serve first at dinner, who will serve first tea before we go to talk. Let this not be the issues that concern you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Chungwa, let what concerns you in this leadership be the substance of what you negotiate. Thank you, and I support.
Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important motion as I support. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure all Kenyans who are watching us this evening are giving thanks to God, and our prayers that we have always said in our national anthem, that God of all creation blesses this land, our nation, justice be our shield and defender, and may we dwell in unity, peace, and liberty. That has been achieved today through this motion, and I'm sure lots of challenges that we have gone through in the past, that, you know, many lives have been lost, young ones have been killed, old have been killed, people's properties have been destroyed, and Kenya has suffered because of that for many years. But today, dialogue has a room, reasoning together has a room, and I believe through this discussion, Kenya will come back again, and we will be able to prosper as a nation together. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is a beautiful country. We cannot afford it, because today God has put us in leadership position, and we are all honorable members who have a lot of responsibility in our hands. And it is a great evening for all of us, for those who are peace-loving, to just give thanks to God, because through this message or the debate that is going on, Kenyans will say thank you to God, because we will rebuild our nation, we will work together, and we will listen together. And I'm sure Kenyans will say never again. I want to thank the majority leader together with the entire team and wish them well. And also thank our president together with the former prime minister for allowing reasoning to take place in our nation. I support, and it is my prayer that Kenyans will enjoy peace and unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Zamzam.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi kama mbunge wa Mombasa niliyopigiwa kura katika coalition ya Azimio, muungano wa Azimio, napenda kuunga mkono mjadala huu wa leo ili kuleta uwiano, maelewano, umoja na upendo katika taifa. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya imekuwa katika hali tata miaka mingi sana, kila wakati baada ya kura. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ningependa kuelezea wabunge wenzangu, sisi kama wabunge ndio tunaowasha moto kule nje. Sisi ndio wengi wetu tumefanya watu wetu wakapoteza maisha. Na waombeni haya mazungumzo kadri yanavyoendelea, Mheshimiwa Spika, wabunge waweke amani kule mashinani. Wabunge waheshimu vinara wa vyama vyote viwili. Na hili mimi nitalisisitiza sana Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu tumepoteza maisha ya watoto wetu wengi sana. Na Kenya haiwezi kusonga mbele ikiwa taifa halina amani, ikiwa taifa halina mwelekeo. Mheshimiwa Spika, hakuna maendeleo ambayo tunaweza kupata kama taifa, kwa sababu hatuna amani katika taifa hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono Mheshimiwa kinara wetu wa Azimio Bwana Raila Odinga, na naunga mkono pia rais kwa kuweza kukutana na kinara wetu wakakaa wakasema kuna haki ya kukaa chini na kuweza kupeleka Kenya mbele kama Kenya moja. Wengi walisema kuwa tutaka sisi handshake, tutaka nusu mkate. Ile ilikuwa ni ndoto ya mchana. Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi tuko sawa, tuko tayari kuweka serikali katika njia iliyo sawa, isipokuwa tutaka amani na tutaka tujue hata zile sava zikifunguliwa pia. Mheshimiwa Spika, itakuwa ni bora kwetu sisi sote katika yale matakwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, pia ningeomba kuwa kina mama 47, mambo mengi yamezungumzwa katika yale mazungumzo, lakini kina mama 47 kuhusu ngafu haijawekwa pale. Ndugu yangu minority leader na ndugu yangu majority leader, hakikisheni mambo ya kina mama, pesa za kina mama za ngafu mweke pale, manake najua Raila Amolo Odinga alikuwa mstari wa mbele kuweza kutetea kina mama. Kwa hiyo kama mama county wa Mombasa, na mimi natetea wa mama wa county 47. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Kenya iwe na amani.
Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance. And let me really commend the Head of State, His Excellency William Ruto, and the former Prime Minister for taking that bold position of going into dialogue. Honorable Speaker, dialogue has been a great thing in the world. In the book of the Old Testament, God himself meets Satan, and they have a dialogue in the book of Isaiah. In the New Testament, Jesus confronts Satan again, and they negotiate whether he can jump down and over the mountains. And therefore, for me, dialogue is the greatest thing. Number two, let me congratulate the two leaders of the House, both the leader of majority and the leader of minority, that you have decided to bring this thing to Parliament, because this is where it rests, and I want to appreciate what the leader of minority did say, that every Parliament has had its stake to deal with such matters. And he was able to profile them very clearly, both the IPPG, the National Accord, and even the Constitution of 2010. I want also to indicate that worldwide, parliaments have resolved such challenges, and we should not be afraid this is the right place to bring this material. When you look at America during the Boston Tea Party's parliament that did solve that, the Philadelphian Conference, as difficult it was parliament again. And even during the French Revolution, until the death of Lafayette, it was Parliament that was dealing with the revolution after all. And therefore, this is the place to bring it. I want to tell this House, Honorable Speaker, that I'm also very proud that we need to bring the issues of an election which is not accepted by both sides, because this is where we lose it. But I want to indicate that it's very important that we allow always one government that wins to be in power. That the examples we saw in history of Africa, whenever we tried coalition government, they failed and they were disaster. If you look at the case study in Sudan, where we have had Riek Machar and others, it never worked for us. Go back into the history of Kwame Nkrumah and even try the Zimbabwean case of Nkrumah and Mugabe, it didn't work. And therefore elections are important. So go there and fix the electoral system so clearly that each time we have a winner, that winner be respected and let be the one to take government and rule going forward. I would really want to speak on the issues of coalition government, especially the handshake. That did you know that the Kenyan debt by 2013 when Kibaki leaves, it was only 1.9 trillion. And did you know that by 2017 it was only 4 trillion? But when we had the handshake government between 2017 and 2022, it spiraled to about 9 trillion Kenya shillings. And that was 95% debt stock, and that's where we are. So we need to have a government that respected its power. I want to wish you well. I support this, and go and do good work for the Kenyans. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support, and first to thank His Excellency the President, and to thank the Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, indeed, for agreeing to dialogue and to listen to each other. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi was the bed. Today they go home to sleep and to realize that we can wake up one morning and do our businesses and relate to each other and work together. And that is all Nairobi would wish, and Nairobi is Kenya. Honorable members, I want to thank the majority leader, the minority leader. And I want to pray that as you go, where you disagree, get out, pack it. Don't bring it to Kenyans. Until you agree, bring it to Kenyans. Let them see progress. Let them see that you are walking a journey. And there will be times, yes, you'll feel you're not understanding each other, but just listen to each other. And I know you'll have the best that you'll bring in this house. And I'm hoping that this is the end, Mr. Speaker, that we will never, ever again see ourselves finishing elections, our young boys dying. And as you go to those talks, remember the young people who have brought us to where we are today. They are waiting. They would wish to see that we are carrying an agenda, the agenda that will transform their lives. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, just to thank everyone, it is a team that can listen to each other. It is a team that must remember the President and the Prime Minister are people who listen to each other. Let us not lie to ourselves. It is us who are around us, these two leaders, who drag, who pull until we find ourselves in the situation we are. So, Mr. Speaker, as I finalize, I want to tell Kenya, we must have peace, and God help Kenya to have peace. I support.
Kamket.
Mr. Speaker, tonight I'm a very excited Kenyan. And I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, the leadership of this dialogue team, starting with the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wa and the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. Mr. Speaker, on the first day when this team met at Bomas, we took the liberty as the leadership of members of parliament that come from marginalized communities to go and present ourselves and our issues. But they were told, Mr. Speaker, that they were not ready. Mr. Speaker, I am very excited this evening that in the mandate of this dialogue committee, and let me quote it for the record, Mr. Speaker, that the mandate of the National Dialogue Committee shall be to facilitate dialogue and consensus building and recommend appropriate constitutional, legal, and policy reforms. Mr. Speaker, this is a constitutional moment. Those of us who found ourselves in counties that we were never asked whether we wanted to belong there, this is our time. This is the moment we have been waiting for, Mr. Speaker. And this is the time, Mr. Speaker, that the servers must be opened. Those who met the Constitution of Kenya 2010 never consulted us, Mr. Speaker, or never asked us whether we wanted to be in the counties where we are suffering in at the moment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is our moment. And Mr. Speaker, people have been talking about opening of servers of election results. For me, as a minority from Baringo County, Mr. Speaker, this is the moment that I want the servers of the creation of 47 counties. Why did we not create 60 counties? Why did we not create the county of East Pokot, yet we created, Mr. Speaker, the county of West Pokot? And we know logically, Mr. Speaker, sir, that wherever there is east, wherever there is west, there must be east. So, Mr. Speaker, I am a very excited man this evening, and I am looking forward, Mr. Speaker, to go and make our case before the dialogue committee so that we free ourselves from the yokes of marginalization in the first 47 counties. Peace must remain in Kenya. I thank you.
Honorable members, we have done 5-5. We have done 5. What is out of order?
That the third largest party, Jubilee, in this house is both excluded in the National Dialogue Committee and also gets excluded in the proceedings of this House, I beg of you, Mr. Speaker, to also include...
Order. You are total out of order. You are total out of order. You know very well, Honourable Member, you presented a proposal to amend this motion, and I declined to approve it, and I have the right to do so. So you cannot then sneak through the back door to prosecute the same argument. Take your seat. Take your seat, Honourable Member. Take your seat. We have the Azimio coalition and the Kenya Kwanza coalition. Your internal dynamics and contradictions, please leave out the chair. Allow me to give two here. This time it will be 2 minutes each. I'll start with the Honorable Korere. I know all of you, so keep your hands down. I know all of you. Give the mic to Honorable Korere.
Shukrani Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, napenda kumpongeza Rais wa nchi tukufu ya Kenya na kinara wa Azimio Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, na ningependa kusema Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba kitabu takatifu katika kitabu cha Mtakatifu Mathayo 5:9 yatuambia kwamba heri wapatanishi, maana wataitwa wana wa Mungu. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ikiwa tungekuwa katika shule waambie kamisha sentensi hiyo, itasema wamelaaniwa waleta furugu, maana wataitwa wana wa shetani. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ningetaka tu kusema kwamba mazungumzo ambayo yanaendelea kwa sasa hivi ama yanaenda kuanza ni jambo nzuri sana katika nchi ya Kenya. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ni aibu tu kwamba tunafanya haya baada ya kuzua vurugu, baada ya kupoteza maisha ya watoto wa Kenya, baada ya kuharibu mali ya Wakenya. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, zote tulienda katika uchaguzi na kuna wale pia sisi tulishinda. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, katika mashindano yoyote ile lazima kuweko na mshindi na mshindwa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hata tulipoenda kupigania urais, tunajua kwamba baadhi ya wale wote walipia tukafanya mazungumzo haya iwe ni njia ya kutumia mlango wa nyuma kujitafutia ukubwa na maneno mengine. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nikienda kumalizia, mimi nimetazama tu orodha ya wale ambao wanaenda katika hayo mazungumzo. Na katika Kenya hii kuna watu tofauti. Kuna wafugaji, kuna wakulima, kuna wavuvi, kuna wakusanyaji. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiangalia katika orodha hiyo yote, hamna mahali mfugaji yako na hamna mahali wakusanyaji na wawindaji wako. Ukitaka unajua, naona Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa hajui wakusanyaji na wawindaji ni hunters and gatherers. Wandoroba ambaye mimi ni mmoja wao. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema naunga mkono sana haswa mjadala huu, lakini niko na tashwishi kwamba
Your time is up. Your time is up, Korere. Farah Maalim.
Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Speaker, every 5 years, we have a dialogue. We have problems, insecurity in the country, and then we have a dialogue. I was in this house with you about 30 years ago, and when this place were not chairs but there were benches, you remember we had issues, people who were trying to lift the mess, and we had issues here. 30 years later, we have similar issues. Why? Because we have an electoral system. Initially, the electoral system we had was called the first passport system. And I remember in the 7th Parliament, the combined opposition votes was about 3.7 million.
What is out of order, Wanjala?
I'll get some more.
Hold this time. What is out of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do agree with you that you know all of us. But I have keenly been seeing that the people you have been choosing on our side are those people who do not support the agenda that is on the floor of the House. They are the ones who already crossed are not supporting this motion.
Order, Angela.
Send him out.
Order, Honorable Angela, you are in this House.
You can't cast us.
Since this debate started, not a single member has opposed to this motion. I don't know if you have been listening. Secondly, do your work, let me do mine. It is it's my discretion to pick who to speak.
Yes.
Once in a while, I consult your leaders who they want to speak. Keep your cool, Angela.
I hope I get my time back. Mr. Speaker, at that time, what we said is that the first passport system does not serve us right, and that the majority of Kenya's minority could end up choosing the leadership of the country, because the combined opposition votes those days was 3.7 million, and the KANU won with 1.8 million, and they still got the presidency because of the system. We said we have to go for a system that says 50+1. We went on, and always the issue was the feeling that the elections were not fair and that there was a rigging. That is what causes the problems. Every time we try to fix the problem, we never go into the electoral justice itself to see that we have a system that is foolproof, that essentially cannot be cheated. Mr. Speaker, we have the US, 480 million people who go for voting, and by 5:30 in the afternoon, you know who lost and who won. We have India, which has got 1.4 billion people. We still know by the end of the day who won and who lost. We need to invest in that so that we do not create discussions and dialogues after elections. So that the winner becomes the winner and the loser becomes the loser. Mr. Speaker, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. And nobody has talked about that for the longest. Mr. Speaker, can I have 1 more minute? Because Rafael Wanjala has taken my minute.
Give him 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, when you say constitutional, legal, and policy, perfect. We don't need 47 counties in this country. We need a maximum of 12 or 13 or 14. 16. Mr. Speaker, these ones are not viable. We need to bring the resources together for them to be able to make a meaningful change in the lives of people in the country. Mr. Speaker, the other thing is that this cannot be a nation of men and women. It can be a nation of laws and systems, and that is how we have to look at it. Not because Farah has said this or that, or not because Wetangula has said this or that. It has to be a nation of systems where everybody, nobody's above the law and nobody's below the law. And we have a system that...
Mukunji.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to stand and support the formation of the dialogue committee of this country, and I want to say that I'm one of the happiest members of Parliament, being the chairman of KYPA that represents the young people in this House, Honorable Speaker. And one of the issues that had gotten into really my nerves is the issue of ensuring that these young people, I have seen them going into a level of radicalization in the name of, Honorable Speaker, getting them into streets. And I want to say I commend Right Honorable Raila Odinga for thinking there's another better route to really have a conversation. And this is about the dialogue. Honorable Speaker, one of the things that I would like for it to come out of this dialogue is the issue of when we finish elections, we need to have soberness in this country so that a government can get a chance to implement their plan. It is unfortunate that we have governments coming in and then there's a lot of noise and disturbance, that they have excuses not to do what they are supposed to do. Honorable Speaker, as I support the National Dialogue Committee, I want to really commend Honorable Shongwa and our minority leader, and tell them that they have a chance to prove their leadership in this country and show that it is true people can have a conversation, agree on things, and this country and the president should continue implementing the plan and have peace while implementing the plan. Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I speak to support the formation of this committee, let me thank the leaders, His Excellency the President, the former Prime Minister, the leaders of the House, both sides, because really we have to speak. We now put Kenya first, and we have said Kenya is bigger than every one of us. My message to you as the immediate former co-chair of the bipartisan talks is that go and speak in good faith. Do not engage in blackmail, threats, and coercion, because this is exactly what possibly brought the other talks to a close. May I thank the members of the former bipartisan committee, because they also did a good job for the country, and it's because of them that we are where we are, because they actually sacrificed a lot in the circumstances of that particular time. As you go out, IBC still remains one of the first matters on the agenda. The country is waiting with abated breath because we have a lot to do with IBC. The president has actually said he wants it entrenched, and therefore, if we are to do any boundaries review and other matters that are pending, IBC must be given priority number one. With those remarks, I beg to support.
Right. Allow me to the member for Jomvu. I'll give you 2 minutes. You'll be the last. After him, Ichungwa, you'll get up to reply.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia fursa hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza nataka kuunga mkono kusema kuwa naunga mkono jopo hili la maridhiano ambalo likianza kuwa tumpongeza Rais Mheshimiwa William RUTO na vile vile Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga. Mheshimiwa Spika, vile vile mimi nataka kumpongeza kiongozi Kimani Ichung'wah na vile vile kiongozi wetu ambaye yuko hapa Bwana Pia Wandai. Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo haya ni kama ambayo tulitabiri wiki 3 tu zilizopita wakati tukiwa kule Kilindini. Mheshimiwa Kimani Ichung'wah alizungumza akasema serikali ya manchi haiwezi kupelekwa kwa umwagikaji wa damu. Na vile vile siku hiyo hiyo tukiwa kwenye function ya AVA maneno hayo yalirudia. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona yale Mheshimiwa Wandai amesema juu ya vita vilivyotokea Uganda. Tumeona kina General Sejusa. Tumeona vile vile kina Kasiwa Gwanga. Tumeona vile vile Kiza Besije. Wote walijitia msituni kwa ajili ya kupigania mambo yaliyotokana na conflict za kisiasa. Mheshimiwa Spika, langu mimi ni kuiombea hili jopo liweze kufanya kazi ili Kenya ipate amani. Na vile vile Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema serikali ijue Azimio hatuna haja ya kuingia serikalini wala kuchukua nusu mkate. Haja yetu ni kuangalia hali ya maisha ya wananchi wa Kenya wamedumishwa. Na iombea jopo hili lifanye kazi na Mungu aipeleke Kenya yetu mbele. Asante, Mungu atubariki.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me take this opportunity. Unlike other times, Honorable Speaker, this is one of the motions of all the people who have spoken, none has opposed. And I commend the House for the support. And that tells you, Honorable Speaker, that indeed the country was yearning for this moment.
Inform Honorable Angela that.
Of course, Honorable Angela may have challenges in understanding what many people are saying here. But I think he has seen that nobody has opposed Honorable Angela, that everybody has been in support of this motion, including those who are speaking from the other side of the political divide. In Azimio, those in the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, and also Honorable Speaker, that testifies to the fact that indeed the country, because these are the people's representatives, when these leaders speak, they speak on behalf of the people in their constituencies who have elected them and sent them to this august house to speak on their behalf. And Kenyans were yearning for this moment, a moment that the country would come together and we reason together for the benefit of those people who have sent us and charged us with the responsibility of leading them. I want to assure the House, Honorable Speaker, that with my brother, the Honorable Pio and our brother, the Honorable, His Excellency, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, and the rest of the team, we shall endeavor to ensure that we consider all matters that will be before us in a very objective manner, in the best interest of the country, and as we have said, in line with our constitutions, not our constitutions, Honorable Speaker, the rule of law and all the established laws, and with due respect to all state organs, including other arms of government. We shall not in any manner seek to undermine any other arm of government. And I like what the Honorable David Ochieng asked us to do, that we must also take this opportunity to buttress the importance and the mandate that Parliament is charged with. And that is why it was important to have this motion in place, so that we get legal anchorage through Parliament, so that whatever output that comes out of this dialogue process, Honorable Speaker, may also find a sitting in our constitutional architecture through Parliament, both houses here and the Senate, Honorable Speaker, so that whatever we come up with will serve the interest of the greater Kenyan people. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, let me take this opportunity also to thank our predecessors in the bipartisan team under the able leadership of the Honorable Chair of our Jailer Committee, the Honorable Sir George Tonga Murugara, and Senior Counsel Otiende Omolo, for the work they put in. And indeed, I must appreciate that this team already set a foundation for us. The framework agreement that they developed during that process, and therefore it may not be seen that that process was a waste of time. We have agreed that we shall just amend that framework agreement, and our technical teams are already working on the relevant amendments where necessary, so that we use that agreement as a basis of our engagement. And I take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the House, on behalf of the people of Kenya, to thank that bipartisan team that also put in many hours of their time. You know, Honorable Speaker, when members of Parliament gather together, it is always assumed that there are sitting allowances. And this bipartisan team under the leadership of Honorable Otiende Omolo and Honorable Murugara, all those members sat for long hours, not attracting any sitting allowances, at times having to chip in from their pockets, as we have done with the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and the Honorable Pio, and at times to foot bills, because we said we will do this in the best interest of the country. And I must thank them, because when we said no, Serena, they quickly agreed. And we now meet at a public place in the Bomas of Kenya, and as many members have noted, the motion allows us to be able to collect views from other stakeholders, and we will endeavor to do that. With those many remarks, I thank you all, and I beg to reply.
Thank you. Honorable members, I'll now put the question, which is that aware that Article 1(1) of the Constitution provides that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with the Constitution. Further aware that Article 1(2) of the Constitution provides that the people of Kenya may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. Conscious that Article 10 of the Constitution espouses the national values and principles of governance, which include the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people. Further conscious that Article 94 of the Constitution provides that Parliament manifests the diversity of the nation, represents the will of the people, and exercises their sovereignty. Recognizing that there is a need to embrace consultation, dialogue, and consensus building as a way of resolving issues of concern to the people of Kenya. Cognizant that despite the constitutional and legal reforms on the electoral process and the electoral laws, after every election cycle there has been mistrust of electoral outcomes leaving the country divided. Further cognizant that efforts to enhance constitutionalism, the rule of law and respect for human rights need to be promoted. Aware that there have been previous calls and attempts at building consensus on issues of concern to the people of Kenya through bipartisan engagements in Parliament, appreciating the need to establish an inclusive forum for dialogue, consultation, and consensus building in seeking to promote the peace, stability, and prosperity of the country, acknowledging that the majority party in Parliament and the minority party in Parliament have agreed to embrace dialogue through the establishment of a national dialogue committee to recommend a way forward on the issues of concern to the people of Kenya. Now, therefore, the Houses of Parliament resolve as follows. 1, that the 2 Houses of Parliament establish a national dialogue committee consisting of 10 members to represent the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, Kenya Kwanza, a coalition constituting the majority part of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party Azimio, a coalition forming the minority party of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, that each coalition shall appoint 5 members to the National Dialogue Committee, that the membership of the National Dialogue Committee shall be drawn from Parliament and outside Parliament, that the National Dialogue Committee shall comprise the following members to represent Kenya Kwanza: Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, Delegation Leader; Governor Cecil Mbarire, Deputy Delegation Leader; Honorable Senator Aaron Cheriot; Honorable Omar Hassan Omar, and Honorable Catherine Wambilianga. That the National Dialogue Committee shall comprise the following members to represent Azimio: His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, Delegation Leader; Honorable Pio Wandai, Deputy Delegation Leader; Honorable Amina Mianzi; Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, and Honorable Senator Okongo Mogeni. That the mandate of the Dialogue Committee shall be to facilitate dialogue and consensus building and recommend appropriate constitutional, legal, and policy reforms on issues of concern to the people of Kenya, to be framed by the National Dialogue Committee in line with the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Kenya, and respecting the functional and institutional integrity of state organs. The Houses of Parliament notes that the technical teams representing the Kenya Kwanza and Azimio shall support the National Dialogue Committee. That the technical team representing Kenya Kwanza shall comprise the following persons: Dr. Mudhomi Thiangolu, Dr. Linda Musumba, Dr. Duncan Ojwang, and Nick Biketi. That the technical team representing Azimio shall comprise the following persons: Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, Professor Adam Solo, Abubakar Zain Abubakar, and Lynn Ngugi. That further, the National Dialogue Committee shall be assisted by 2 officers designated as communication secretaries, one of whom shall be appointed by the majority party, by the leader of the majority party, and the other by the leader of the minority party. That the Houses of Parliament further resolve that the National Dialogue Committee shall formulate and adopt a framework agreement to guide the bipartisan talks, that the National Dialogue Committee shall report to the leadership of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio coalitions within 60 days, and after that submit its report to Parliament. That in the execution of its mandate, the National Dialogue Committee may invite, engage with and consider submissions from stakeholders, collect views from the public, and engage experts, professionals, and other technical resource persons as necessary. That the National Dialogue Committee shall determine its own rules of procedure, and that the speakers and clerks of both Houses of Parliament shall provide secretariat and any other necessary support to facilitate the work of the National Dialogue Committee. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, this being a matter that concerns both our houses, the office of the Speaker will forward this motion to the Senate, which we understand is on recess now, but I'll liaise with my counterpart speaker to see if they can hold a special sitting as soon as is practically possible, so that we can get this committee underway to do its work. Honorable members, it is now, you may be upstanding. I had agreed with your leaders that when we finish this motion, we rise, but I see Wango gesturing. He has a bill coming. Maybe I could rescind that order that we rise and carry on with that bill. Take your seats, honorable members. Sorry. Next order. Yes, honorable member for Changamwe. Honorable Wandai, don't lead a walkout. It is your member who has a bill coming.
Mr. Speaker, maybe in line with whatever we've just discussed, I'm pleading to this House to have only one government, Kenya government. Let us have factions, but then the government should just be Kenya government, not Kenya Kwanza government. I'm pleading for this House so that the spirit of this motion can actually have a meaning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order. Next order.
Order number 12, the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022.
Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe. Sorry, Emmanuel. Your leaders had agreed that we could stop where we ended.
Thank you, Honorable.
Proceed to move your bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, I start off by informing new members that this is a retrieve of the Sugar Bill 2019, which was forwarded to the Senate for consideration on 29th of November 2021 before the lapsing of the 12th session. Honorable Speaker, allow me to share an outline of the sugar industry in Kenya. Sugarcane was indigenous crop grown in Kenya before the advent of the colonial era. Local sugarcane varieties were grown by agrarian communities along riparian lands. The crop was chewed as food and used in making traditional beer. Sugarcane as an industrial crop was introduced in Kenya in the year 1902 when the first trials were planted in Kisumu. The first sugar factory, Honorable Speaker, was established at Miwani near Kisumu in 1922 and later at Ramisi in the Coast Province in 1927. Honorable Speaker, the government of Kenya has been widely involved in the expansion of sugar production through investment in sugarcane growing. Honorable Speaker, sugar growing schemes and factories. Policies on sugar production from the early 1900s up to independence in 1963 were based on colonial law, which indicated, Honorable Speaker, that only Asians were allowed to grow sugar. The policy reforms of the Cyanotic Plan of 1954, which allowed Africans to grow certain crops, certain cash crops, did not affect the sugar. That changed with the enactment of the Session of Paper number 10 of 1965, which allowed Africans to grow industrial sugar after independence. In the 1960s, the government decided to invest in sugar factories, mostly in Western Kenya. In the 1973, Honorable Speaker, the government established the Kenya Sugar Authority, KSA, to advise on the sugar industry development in the country. To expand the mandate of Kenya Sugar Authority, the Kenya Sugar Board, KSB, was established in the year 2001 by the Sugar Act of 2001 to better and improve the running affairs of the industry. In the year 2003, we had the agriculture sector reforms that led to the enactment of the Agriculture and Food Authority Act of 2013, which saw
so as to consolidate the numerous pieces of legislations within the agriculture sector, address the overlap of functions, address obsolete legislations, and benefit of the economies of scale. Honorable Speaker, this led to the repealing of the Sugar Act in 2001 and gave birth to the AFA Sugar Directorate, which is AFA, and other directorates under AFA, which included the Coffee Directorate, Fiber Crops Directorate, Horticulture Crops Directorate, Food Directorate, Nuts and Oils Crops Directorate, Mira Pyrethrum, and other industrial crops directorates. Honorable Speaker, let me shed some light on the policies behind the government's involvement in the sugar subsector. One, there is need to ensure self-sufficiency with the exportable surplus in sugar production. Sugar production was regarded as an essential import substitution strategy to save the country the much needed foreign exchange. Sugarcane growing was seen as a tool for social development. It provided employment opportunities and wealth creation in the rural areas of Kenya. As a social tool, Honorable Speaker, sugarcane production was seen as a catalyst for raising the standards of living in rural Kenya. The high proportion of workers in the sugarcane industry implies that sugar revenue directly permits and irrigates the whole rural economy and thus contributing to rural stability. Sugarcane growing, Honorable Speaker, is viewed as an agent for infrastructural and rural development. Sugar industries naturally promote other activities in agriculture, horticulture, or recreational areas. It also promotes much needed services, for example, mechanics, shopkeepers, and agrochemical workers. Within the sugarcane growing areas, the plantation and outgrower farms are supplied with roads, rural electrification, housing, health facilities, and education centers. The construction of such facilities goes a long way to improve the infrastructure of rural areas. Sugarcane growing was thus viewed as a justification for undertaking such projects and programs. And finally, Honorable Speaker, at the time of independence, the domestic Kenyan market was served by imported sugar. In order to protect this domestic market, local sugarcane growing was seen as a viable alternative. Deliberate policy measures were thus put in place to attain this goal. In pursuit of the above policies, Honorable Speaker, the development of sugar industry has been political, and hence sugar can apply to regard both as a political commodity and a commodity which is politically sensitive. Honorable Speaker, the principal object of this bill is to reinstate the Sugar Act, which was repealed through the enactment of the Crops Act of 2013. Honorable Speaker, the enactment of the bill shall restore the role of Kenya Sugar Board, currently undertaken by the Sugar Directorate of the Agriculture and Food Authority, established under the Agriculture and Food Authority Act of 2013. Honorable Speaker, since the repeal of the Kenya Sugar Board in 2013, ineffective stewardship of the sugar industry by the Agriculture and Food Authority has contributed to the following, Honorable Speaker. One, there is rampant non-payment of farmers by public sugar mills. Two, there is increased cost of sugar production. Three, there is decline in land acreage under sugar. Four, there is lack of market for sugar. Five, there is failure to control imports and exports of sugar. And six, there is poor management of sugar companies. And seven, Honorable Speaker, what I was able to pick in the bill is the lack of research and cane development initiatives. I know my colleagues will ask, how come there is the issue of lack of market for sugar, Honorable Speaker, yet today there is no sugar in the market? What is positive of it is automatically negative at a situation as it comes. Today, the government, Honorable Speaker, has opted to lock down all the mills in anticipation that they are now getting the cane to be ready for harvesting. What is going to happen, Honorable Speaker? There is going to be glut. There is going to be oversupply of cane.
and there's going to be overproduction of sugar. At that time, Honorable Speaker, we are going to have too much sugar that will not have a market, given the situation that is there on today, Honorable Speaker. So whatever if we don't regulate it today, it means tomorrow we are getting it wrong. Honorable Speaker, with the re-establishment of the Kenya Sugar Board, the following institutions, Honorable Speaker, the Sugar Development Levy and the Sugar Development Fund, and the establishment of the Kenya Sugar Research Institute shall address the challenges to save the dyeing sector, especially looking at the issues of Miwani in 2001, which died in 2001, Moroni, which died in 2001, Mumias, which went under in 2019. Rather, when I say died, it went into receivership, Honorable Speaker, being placed under receivership, with the Stony Sugar and Nzoia Sugar operating at low capacity. Honorable Speaker, these three institutions are being established in this bill. And when you look at the various, the negatives that appeared in my above clause in terms of what has failed, shall only be cured through institutions, Honorable Speaker. When we talk of lack of research and cane development, is the issue of raising resources. And we are now saying we are going to have sugar development levy, a fund, a resource which is going to be used in various levels, the way you will see in my forthcoming discussions, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we look at, as we are all aware, agriculture is one of the devolved functions performed by the county government. The bill segregates the functions of the board and those of the county government. One of the key roles of the county government is to establish, is the establishment of an efficient road network for the movement of sugarcane, delivery of other services, and the general development of the sugar industry. Honorable Speaker, when you look at what is happening today with the AFA bill as it is not directly getting to the farmers. Instead, there is a total vacuum. It's not addressing anything to do with the farmers. It has left the farmer on himself, on his own. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the issues which we talk of, the rural roads, which are access roads in the various villages, and the issue, Honorable Speaker, of general development of the sugar industry, that's the agronomy. We used to see a lot of inspectors going into the supervision into agricultural farms. We want to see them back, Honorable Speaker, and this has been enabled through this bill. Honorable Speaker, most millers, once they lift the sugarcane from the farms, never bother to fix the roads till the next harvest. Maybe the introduction of a 45% allocation of sugar development levy to infrastructure development will reduce the character. Honorable Speaker, in the bill, and I want to thank the Committee on Agriculture. The Committee on Agriculture has really taken a lot of time, has done a lot of public participation on this, and it has really distributed on how, has made some improvement on my proposal in the bill. And when you look at the report, I feel it is accommodating everyone, and when you open it, you'll come to see how it is distributing this resource of sugar development levy. Honorable Speaker, those of us who grew up in the village recall the GK motorbikes ridden by government agriculture and extension officers offering extension training to farmers. This is an additional function that has been given to the county government. Honorable Speaker, we are bringing the Constitution of Kenya 2010 into this bill. When you look at the AFA bill, Honorable Speaker, it's failing to recognize that aspect of devolution. And we are saying we want to see the extension officers, Honorable Speaker, getting to the farmers. We want to see when the researchers carry out the various researches in terms of the soil samples, in terms of what fertilizer to apply where. Honorable Speaker, we want to see these people back. And that's why we say in this bill, we are recognizing the fact that county government is devolved, agriculture is devolved, but what happens, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to sugarcane, it has to be adhered to in terms of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, let me now take my time to go through the clauses, and I would want to single out clause 6, Honorable Speaker, on the bill which outlines the composition of the board. We intend to, the bill seeks that we will have a board, chaired by an executive chairperson, elected by the board from among the representatives of growers on the board and appointed by the cabinet secretary. Honorable Speaker, we are bringing on board the executive so that the executive still appoints. But Honorable Speaker, let those people that person who is being appointed be elected by the farmers, by the various growers, but the CS reserves the right. If the person who is being proposed not the right person, the CS has a voice, Honorable Speaker. 2, we are saying we need 5 representatives elected by cross from each sugarcane catchment area as per the first schedule. Honorable Speaker, when you go to the first schedule, the Committee on Agriculture has made a different proposal, which we'll be looking at in the Committee of the Whole House. And this was our initial proposal, that we need to have 5 representatives elected by growers from each sugarcane catchment area. Honorable Speaker, I propose that 1 representative elected by millers who is knowledgeable in sugar technology and value addition. We reserve, Honorable Speaker, 1 slot for the millers so that the value chain is complete. We have agronomy, the agriculture, we have the government, the industry, and also we have the miller, which represents the manufacturing sector, Honorable Speaker. We also have to comply with the PFM Act and introduce the PS in the ministry for the time being responsible for matters relating to agriculture. We need also to get 1 person nominated by the Council of County Governments, because it's also playing a role, and the PS of National Treasury. And also, finally, Honorable Speaker, the CEO, who shall be an ex-official member and secretary of the board. Honorable Speaker, clause 14, especially part 2, outlines the qualifications of the CEO. And Honorable Speaker, part 3 of the Sugar Bill 2022 gives the board absolute powers to license sugar mills and jaggeries. Honorable Speaker, the proposed bill, clause 18, part 2, suggests that those who run and license sugar mills or jaggery mills shall be liable to fines as high as 10 million shillings or a 5-year jail term. Honorable Speaker, you will realize that there is a lot of violation that is going on. And when you look at how AFA came up to close the issues of the current closure, Honorable Speaker, is out of the violation. AFA could give direction and they don't obey, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, we say, fine, if you don't obey, this is the punishment for your disobedience, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, clause 20 of the bill proposes a 5-year. Honorable Speaker, clause 21 limits the business of processing industrial sugar to licensed millers, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there is a difference between industrial sugar and the white sugar. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, currently you could hear the issue of the mercury sugar. It actually, Honorable Speaker, came as a result, Honorable Speaker, of getting an issue where an import of sugar would want to blend and grind or say is importing as industrial sugar. That clause, Honorable Speaker, we are leaving it to only but licensed millers, so that we don't have just any Tom, Dick, and Harry quickly saying he's importing industrial sugar. Honorable Speaker, part 5 of the proposed bill elaborates on the establishment of the Kenya Sugar Research Institute, which shall be headed by the chairperson appointed by the Cabinet Secretary to promote, coordinate, and regulate research in sugar and sugar diseases and expedite equitable access to research information, resources, and technology. Honorable Speaker, research is very key in this industry of sugarcane, and we are saying that we will have to establish the Kenya Sugar Research Institute. Currently, we have one which is inactive in Kibos, and we are saying, let us fund that institution, let us carry out research on various varieties, let us carry research on soil sampling, so that the soil in Mhai, Honorable Speaker, is accommodating a different variety of cane. Unlike the soil in Abaholo, especially in Ambacha, where I come from, and Istohe, the soils could be different. So this will also help, Honorable Speaker, to promote the application of research findings and technology in the development of sugar, among others. Honorable Speaker, part 5 of the bill provides for the appointment and functions of crop inspectors. Honorable Speaker, crop inspectors are very key. We want people to come and walk around, Honorable Speaker. What made our cane production to come down is because, Honorable Speaker, our aging parents who never went to school, like my mother never went to school, Honorable Speaker, but she understands farming. All she needs to be told is your cane is experiencing the following kind of diseases. So, Honorable Speaker, when we have cane inspectors, we will definitely have a better yield than what we are getting today. Honorable Speaker, also suggested in the proposal is the creation of Sugar Development Fund. And Honorable Speaker, this Sugar Development Levy, the donor funds, money provided by the National Assembly, County Assembly for the purposes of the fund, shall be anchored in the Sugar Development Fund. We want to establish it totally independent of what is happening in the current position, Honorable Speaker. The sugar development levy, which we propose that it will comprise 1% of domestic sugar and 10% of the cost insurance and freight, CIF, on imported sugar, and distributed as follows. Honorable Speaker, I proposed that we do the 15% income or price stabilization for sugar growers, 20% to the board, 20% to the institute, and 45% for infrastructure development in the sugar sector on a pro rata basis. Honorable Speaker, when the bill went to the public, millers and various stakeholders came up with a reorganization of this position, which is in the report of the Committee on Agriculture, and I would want to invite all my colleagues to look at the distribution of how the public felt it should be done. That we'll look at it when we get to the Committee of the whole House. But this was the initial proposal that I had, and the public and the Committee on Agriculture have brought a different position, which I have no issue as long as members will have to agree. Honorable Speaker, Part 7 seeks to establish the Sugar Arbitration Tribunal to deal with the disputes arising among growers and millers as well as other players. As any other industry, Honorable Speaker, there is prone to arise disputes. And so we are suggesting that we have a dispute at a tribunal. Honorable Speaker, according to clause 54, the bill seeks to have farmers holding 51% of the shareholding of all privatized sugar factories and 51% representation on the board of directors of a privatized company. Honorable Speaker, the Committee on Agriculture has a different view. This is the proposal as per the bill. Honorable Speaker, Part 8 proposes the absorption of staff. The exit clause, Honorable Speaker, we look at the absorption of the Sugar Directorate employed by the Agriculture and Food Authority prior to the commencement of this Act, who shall become staff of the board on their current improved terms and conditions of service. We are saying, Honorable Speaker, that those staff who are currently housed under the Directorate of Sugar, we are requesting, once this bill goes through and is made an act, let us move with that staff to the new organization. Honorable Speaker, the first schedule shows the delineation of sugar catchment areas that will guide milling. Honorable Speaker, much of time you had on everywhere, millers and persons of interest in the cane production talking about zoning. My bill is not proposing zoning. No. Instead, Honorable Speaker, what is zoning? Zoning simply meant associating a farmer to one particular miller. That if you belong to Mumia's zone, you cannot take cane to Nzoia sugar factory. If you belong to Butali zone, you cannot take to West Kenya sugar factory. Honorable Speaker, the bill is proposing a region. We are saying let us allow competition. One region could have 3-4 mills, so that you have an alternative on where you want to take your cane. But we must have a solution in terms of reorganization of any resources we are going to get from the national government. If it's going to come from the SDL, how do we take it to the farmer? It must be in a structured way. Meaning, Honorable Speaker, we cannot expand and say you will go all over the whole world. You can go to the coast and get cane to come and crush in West Kenya, for example. Or you go to as far as Sony to get cane and come and crush in Nzoia, for example, Honorable Speaker. We are saying, for example, region number 1, the Rift Valley, Rift region, we are proposing that Kericho, Nandi, and Uasin Gishu belong to that. This has been made a different suggestion through the committee where they went to the people, but the bill proposes Upper Western to get Bungoma and Trans Nzoia, all mills within that region, Honorable Speaker. We say Lower Western region to get Busia, Kakamega, Siaya, and Vihiga. Honorable Speaker, the South region, we have Homa Bay, Kisumu, Migori, and Narok. And the Coast region, Honorable Speaker, we get Kwale, Lamu, and Tana River. Honorable Speaker, the second schedule outlines the provisions as to the conduct of business and affairs of the board. Honorable Speaker, the third schedule gives the guidelines for the agreements between parties in the sugar industry with interest to Part 1. The parties, Honorable Speaker, in this case we are referring to the farmer and the miller. We need them to have, there is a format which we are proposing the regulation to come up with a way an agreement is going to be anchored so that we don't just expose a farmer, leaving a farmer alone. How do I separate that the speaker owning plot A and the one owning plot B cannot farm for 2 different mills? It's only the agreement which is going to distinguish that. Honorable Speaker, the proposed bill affects the functions of the county governments as it deals with functions of agriculture assigned to the county governments under paragraph 1 of part 2 of the first schedule of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, this bill is a money bill and shall occasion additional expenditure of public funds. In this respect, Honorable Speaker, I wish to urge the members to review the bill with a fine-tooth comb to appreciate its intent and purpose. Honorable Speaker, it's in this sense that this bill becomes critically important to address one of the greatest challenges currently facing our sugar subsector. I have read the committee's report and recommendations, Honorable Speaker, geared towards safeguarding the sugar industry in Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I'm grateful to your able office, the clerk, and the committee for the support that you have accorded and all other stakeholders for their marvelous contributions to this bill. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask Honorable Speaker that the member for Lugari, who was the secretary to the task force committee, makes an input, and I know definitely the member for Tinderet will have a longer story to tell after that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order. Who is seconding the motion?
I beg to ask the member Lugari, Honorable Nabi Nabora, to second.
Now that's proper. So, Nabi Nabora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Honorable Wangwe for coming up with this bill, especially that the bill had collapsed in the last parliament. Mr. Speaker, this bill comes at a time, very difficult time in our history as the people who grow cane. Why? Because in so many years, after 1984, this is the first time officially millers have been closed down because of lack of crop, lack of cane. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, this comes at a time when sugar is costing the highest ever. Actually, it is the highest in the whole continent now, at over 350 shillings a kilo. And yet is a crop that we have lived knowing, we have lived growing. Mr. Speaker, why I see this bill as God sent is this: that in the last decade or so, sugarcane acreage has been dwindling to the extent that as I speak to you now, we have less than 157,000 hectares of land under cane. Compare that with 223,605 hectares in 2015. It doesn't tell us a good story. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that the biggest challenge today and why the mills had to close down is that we were harvesting immature cane, as immature as 10 months. Who was the loser here? The loser here was the farmer, losing between 48 and 74% of what would have been his earning. And therefore, sugarcane as an economy has made our people more poorer than they were in the years before. Mr. Speaker, what are we trying to cure with this bill? First, that we are trying to make sugarcane farming an economic venture that is viable. Second, that we are trying through this bill to provide a mechanism where Kenya is going to be self-sufficient in sugarcane. Having served as a joint secretary in the task force that was put together in 2018, Mr. Speaker, I want to confirm that Kenya has a potential to be a net exporter of sugar. However, we are a net importer because of lack of a regulatory framework, lack of a legal framework, And Mr. Speaker, I want to draw your attention to something very interesting. That a farmer in Mumia's area put cane, his land, and 5 acres of land under cane, developed it himself. The only thing he got from the factory was fertilizer. But at the time of harvesting, when the farmer went to be paid, he did not have anything to take home. Instead, the factory was demanding some money, claiming that this farmer had used their products and therefore they were more expensive than the cane he had brought in the factory. Mr. Speaker, why is it important that we need research in this sector? That the Kibos Research Institute must be resuscitated, must be financed. It has been tested. An individual farmer in Trans Nzoia, Honorable Wekesa, produces between 110 tons of cane per acre to 138, whereas the industry average now stands at 38. What does that mean? What it means is that the agronomical practices in the industry has completely collapsed. And that therefore explains why the factories cannot have enough cane to mill. And this therefore necessitates that research must be at the core of this bill. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the texture of sugarcane farming, 400,000 farmers are small scale. Only 8% of the cane comes from large scale farmers. And yet, in the industry, the farmers are not organized in any particular manner. Therefore, the farmers have been taken advantage of by the millers. And this is something that came into this industry immediately. We repealed the Sugar Act and came up with the AFA Act. Mr. Speaker, the outgrower institutions, which I grew, and I'm sure Honorable Meli, Honorable Salasia here, Honorable Mikal here, who come from the sugar industry, they will tell you that when sugar cane was a profitable venture, the outgrower institutions were very effective. Whether it was a cooperative or it was an outgrower organization, they were very effective. They were speaking for the farmer. Liberalization, Mr. Speaker, and uncouth behavior by some of the millers to kill outgrower institution created a monopoly of venture by the miller. And that explains why the voice of the farmer disappeared on the table of sugarcane economy. Mr. Speaker, 14 million people who depend on this crop. If we don't enact this bill, will all be declared living below poverty. Mr. Speaker, I know Kenya is a country where we compete for resources. I know Kenya is a country where the left does not know what the right is doing. But on this one, we are asking everyone else to know what the right is doing. The left to know what the right is doing. Mr. Speaker, you remember that the farmers have been protesting up to the day before yesterday in the Moron sugar bed, up to the day before yesterday. And what was the issue? They were asking a simple question. How come the government through AFA has said all millers should close, but one miller
has not closed. This is what this industry is. It is taken, I mean, it is being controlled by sugar barons. Mr. Speaker, sugar imported in this country arrives at the port of Mombasa at not more than 88 shillings. Why are we paying 350? It arrived at Mombasa at not more than 88 shillings. Why are we paying 350? Because, Mr. Speaker, we have turned sugar into a political commercial venture. Sugar has been oiling politics of this country. It is the time, as we enact this bill, Mr. Speaker, I appeal to my colleagues, we should also rate sugarcane as an agricultural crop, a food. We need to rate it as a food. If we do so, we even reduce the cost of production. Why do we reduce the cost of production? Because it means the VAT that is taxed on it automatically disappears. And that is what we need to do if we want to help our farmer. Mr. Speaker, this House must leave its moment today. Mr. Speaker, this House must leave its moment today. Why am I saying this? In the past, the sugar barons have controlled the Ministry of Agriculture and have tried to put the horse before the cart. They brought here regulations. So the question was, what were the regulations, implementing? What were those regulations implementing? It must have an act, a law, and then the regulations help to implement that law. And Mr. Speaker, together with this, why I'm supporting this bill fully, the task force report, which was adopted by government, it was a negotiated document. And therefore, this bill is a product of a negotiated document by all stakeholders of the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
You beg to second.
I mean,
I go on record
to second.
Thank you very much. Let's very well. Honorable members, I now propose that the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022 be now read the second time. And the first bite, let's give to Honorable Melly, Julius Melly.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this bill. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that in the last Parliament, as Honorable Wangwe, member for Nabahola, has just put it, this was a bill that we as members, I as part of the members of the agriculture team, pushed it through when it was brought to this House by Honorable Ngunyi, who are actually the owner of the bill. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that this is a very, very important bill. And this is a bill which is going to really put money in the pockets of farmers. I speak, Honorable Speaker, as a farmer, as a representative of farmers from the sugar growing region, and also having grown up throughout my childhood, having depended on sugarcane. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that this bill seeks to really take sugar where it was before. Sugarcane, as a crop in this country, is part of the cash crops that have actually sustained a lot of families. But since the time when we had AFA, and I want to comment other crops, other bills that have taken other crops to be independent. Tea and coffee have already left AFA. AFA was formed in 2012, I think, 2013. And actually it did not take it seriously. The role it was played by crop-based institutions like Sugar Board, Tea Board, and Coffee Board. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the bill, look at the various clauses. I just want to look at each and every other clause. First of all, I want to say that this country can actually be a sugar exporter. It will not be a sugar importer. And Honorable Speaker, I want to thank His Excellency the President, especially when the other day he actually passed in the cabinet the issue of the leasing program, where they actually want to modernize the factories. This is going to support the bottom-up approach, where 14 million Kenyans depend on sugar directly or indirectly. If we are looking for employment for Kenyans, we modernize the sugar mills. If we are looking for money for pesa mfukoni, we make sure that we have enough mills, and we pass this bill to ensure that the farmers have actually enough crop in their farms. I just want to look at a number of sections of this bill. At one, the bill brings order to the now chaotic sector, which is prone to poaching, theft, and disorder. If you look at the bill, Honorable Speaker, the bill has actually developed regions where we will allow mills compete within particular regions. In my region, Honorable Speaker, we have 3 main mills, that is Chemelil, Moroni, Miwani, and Kibos. They can compete within that particular region. We don't want to tie the farmer to one particular mill. But we don't want this idea where farmers move across from Western Kenya all the way to other regions, or move from coast to the Rift Valley, or from Transmara all the way to Western. We want these particular mills to operate in a particular select regions. Honorable Speaker, you realize that this bill proposes the formation of the board. And as we speak now, AFA has a board that is picked, and they have no interest of the farmer. They owe allegiance to different sectors. But if you have a farmer elected office member, the director, from the various regions, and we have said 5 regions or 6 regions, but I will say that there are certain amendments that will bring to this. The director will actually talk and listen to the farmer who is the elector. He will propose farmer-friendly policies. He will actually disallow government from importing sugar. He will also make sure that the farmer himself gets subsidies and the GMR that we need. Other than the government because of the fertilizer. Right now, in most of the areas in my constituency, like Chemelil, Chemase ward, where we almost is 100% sugar, there is a lot of sugar activity. Farmers now are in the farm. They are really planting. They have subsidized fertilizer, and in a very short time, we will have more than what we require. Honorable Speaker, this bill also brings into view what we call sugar development levy. This is a levy, this is the only crop that has been sustaining itself. If you check at tea, coffee, and the others, government has been trying to bail them out. But sugar development levy, with that 1%, they have been able to develop their own roads. They have been able to actually give loans to farmers. They have also been able to give loans even to millers to refurbish their factories. In fact, in the bill, millers have a percentage on if they want to refurbish the mills to modernize them so that they are able to give farmers, they are able to cash. Right now, you realize that the tonnage ratio to the milled white sugar is very high. There is a lot of wastage. So we have, and I want to say this because the president and the government have got sense of this. We really need to modernize all government mills and make sure that we have them running very neat. Honorable Speaker, we also have the Sugar Research Institute. The Sugar Research Institute proposed in the bill will make sure that we have the right variety, early maturing, with sugar with enough sucrose. This one will enable the farmers to really get value. And I think this is why we introduce what we call the CTU. This is where we don't want the issue where some corrupt private mills will always try to actually temper with the weighing scales. But with the CTU, the farmer will now be able, they will be paid as per the sucrose content of his cane. So there will be no issue where some millers or anybody will corrupt and misuse the weighing scale. Honorable Speaker, we have also the issue of road network. Road network will actually be developed as a result of sugar development levy. Right now in my constituency and many parts of Tindere, there were elections in almost all the wards where we are now electing members who will actually take care, not members actually, of people who will be taking care of the money that will be generated out of some of the monies that we get from what we call the sugar cess. Honorable Speaker, we also have the issue of what we call crop inspectors. Crop husbandry requires, every crop requires proper inspectors, proper officers who will be able to tell the farmer the kind of fertilizer is going to apply, the kind of crop he's supposed to have, and to check the seed, the disease development. So we realize that even in the factories themselves, these crop inspectors will move and check how what is going on. Apart from that, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that sugar, if it is developed, in fact it is able to sustain over 14 million Kenyans. Two, it will also be able, as a crop, to see the development of towns and monies. I remember when we were growing up, we had what we call what do you call Nandi Outgrowers Company Limited, Chemelil Outgrowers Company Limited. We had Sugar Belt. These were even supporting sports. You remember the days of Moroni sports, the Chemelil football, and I think, Honorable Speaker, you played in Chemelil football. Yes. These were supported by Ken. Today, those towns are ghost towns. If today this particular bill is passed and the government steps in, this whole sector of sugar will really develop. I also want to mention this, Honorable Speaker, that a number of Kenyans tend to think that by importing sugar, the country benefits. No. In fact, we lose a lot of foreign exchange. That's why the dollar, as we speak today, is moving almost 50. Because in Kenya, if we're not going to stop these craze of importation and to make money and to grow rich faster, this country will go wrong. That is why I want to thank the President, because he has actually put it very clear that the importation of maize, the importation of sugar, the importation of even the vegetable and even rice is actually wrong. It is bad. It is actually shameful, and we need to stand as a country to make sure that we as Kenyans produce and export. Even milk, we are not supposed to do that. We are supposed to make this country a better nation by...
Very well. The Honorable Badi Jomvu. The next microphone is on for you.
Which one? Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza ningetaka kuunga mkono mswada huu ambao umeletwa na Mheshimiwa Navakholo. Mheshimiwa ambaye ameleta mswada mzuri na tunaunga mkono. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika mswada huu tumeona kumekuwa na mambo ambayo mpaka saizi yanatuumiza sana. Na kwa sababu mambo mengi ni kwa sababu ya kwa kuwa hakukuwa na mfumo mzuri wa kuangalia sekta hii ya sukari. Ndipo leo Mheshimiwa Spika, tunanunua sukari shilingi 350 kwa kilo moja. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia haya yote yametokamana na mfumo mbaya wa usimamizi ambao wenzetu wamesema kutoka kuondolewa kwa Sugar Act na kuja hii hapa Act, ndio matatizo mengi pia tumeyaona hapa. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia mswada huu tumeona juu ya mambo ya utafiti, yani research, ambao ni jambo la muhimu sana, na jambo hili leo likizingatiwa, tukiangalia mambo haya, sukari yanaweza kufunguka kwa kiwango kikubwa sana. Leo hii iko Kibose Research Institute ambayo inaangalia mambo haya, lakini vile vile katika mambo ya utafiti, Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi pia kule Pwani tuomba tuiangalie sana, na tutajizatiti kama viongozi kuona kama hivi inavyopiganiwa mambo ya sukari, na sisi tupiganie mambo ya korosho na nazi, kwa sababu ya fanana hasa na mambo haya ambayo yamezungumziwa katika mswada huu. Mheshimiwa Spika, nakuona wacheka kwa sababu leo hii sukari ilikuwa nyuma imenoga na mambo yalikuwa mazuri. Ndipo maana leo Mheshimiwa Spika, wewe mwenyewe kwa tajiriba yako ukiwa mwanasoka ukatoka kuchezea kampuni nafikiri ni ya Chemelil Sugar kule, leo hakuna mambo kama yale kutokea. Lakini wakati ule viwanda vilivyokuwa vimenawiri, Mheshimiwa Spika, ndio tuliweza kuzalisha watu maplea wazuri kama wewe. Na Mheshimiwa Omboko, mimi nakumbuka wakati ule tukiwa sisi ni wadogo, kina Mahmoud Abbas wakiwa kwa FC Leopard, wewe ulikuwa ukicheza na Chemelil Sugar, basi mpira akiupata Mheshimiwa Spika, jua kwanza utapigwa kanzu. Chenga kubwa utakayoipata ukija utawekwa katikati, ukishtuka amefunga bao. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa alichukuliwa kwa tajriba ile, kwa sababu Spika alikuwa ni player ambaye alienukia wakati ule na kuwekwa katika Chemelil Sugar. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeangalia asilimia 48 mpaka 74 wakulima wanakosa faida kutokamana na mavuno ya mapema. Na mavuno haya mapema, Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia ni kwa sababu ya mfumo mbaya ambao ulikuwa pale. Leo wakulima ambao ni wa miwa, walima miwa yao, wanapeleka katika viwanda, wakifika nia yao ni kupata faida, lakini badala ya kupata faida huwa ni hasara. Ili kule kwetu Waswahili tunasema wanalima alafu baadaye inakuwa goji kirba, kirba goji, yaani wanazungushwa na wakizungushwa badala ya kupata faida. Lakini leo hii Mheshimiwa Wangwe, ambaye mheshimiwa huyu wetu wa Navaholo, Mheshimiwa Wangwe, nataka kusema akiwa rafiki wa siku nyingi, kutoka wakati akifanya kazi kama transporter kule Mombasa katika kwa Khosla, ilikuwa Mheshimiwa Wangwe wakati ule malori yao ndio yakibeba sukari kutoka pale port. Lakini leo amekuwa mjumbe na akajua kweli kwa uagizaji wa sukari utaweza kuua viwanda vyetu. Ndio maana Mheshimiwa huyu leo Wangwe ameleta hoja ambayo haitafaidisha Navaholo peke yake, lakini itafaidisha Kenya mzima, na ni kiongozi wa tajriba. Ndio maana leo yuko bunge hili kwa mara ya 3, ana serve pamoja na kijana mwepesi Fulangenge ambaye yuko hapa Badi Twalibu, mbunge wa Nyovu. Kwa hiyo leo tukiangalia mambo haya ambayo yamezungumzwa hapa na wanenaji wenzangu, Kenya hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, ina uwezo wa kuchukua sukari kupeleka nje kuuzia nchi nyingine katika kontinenti letu la Afrika. Lakini leo mambo haya yamekuwa ni matatizo kitambo cha, kwa kuwa pale port badala ya hawa watu wetu wenye viwanda, watu wanakwenda chukua barua za exemption, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanatia masukari yale ambayo inawekwa pale, mtu halipi duty. Leo watu wanatajirika kulingana na hii maneno ya sukari. Mimi nashukuru Mheshimiwa Nabwera amesema hapa kuwa haya mambo ya sukari imekuwa ni kigeregezo cha wanasiasa kucontrol uongozi, wafanyabiashara kucontrol uongozi, nani anayemtaka na nani ambaye hawamtaki. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naona kulingana na huu wakati wenzangu wengi watakana pia kuchangia, ningeendelea zaidi, lakini nataka niseme kuwa na uunga mkono ili na mimi niweze kuwapatia nafasi wenzangu waweze kuchangia, na kwa ruhusa yako kama utanipatia nguvu nimpishe Mama Zamzam kwa hiyo nafasi yangu.
Thank you for contributing and thank you for having your bite. Let's have the Honorable Makali, but then be magnanimous enough because you can allow every other person who is in the House to speak on this. Proceed, Honorable Makali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Now that I have the mic.
Order.
I can proceed.
Order, allow Honorable Makali to proceed.
Thank you. You will have ruled him out of order. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this particular opportunity to also weigh in on this particular bill that has been brought by my very good friend, the Honorable Member for Navaholo, Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe. First is to thank Honorable Wangwe for literally resuscitating this bill, which had actually been enacted by this House in the 12th Parliament, but it literally died at the Senate because the Senate did not deal with it. I'm just praying, Your Honor, Honorable Speaker, that we can be able to fast-track this bill so that the cane farmers from the regions we represent can be able to reap from the fruits of this particular bill. Honorable Speaker, as we deliberate on this bill, sugar factories have been closed in the entire of Western Kenya. As we deliberate on this bill, Honorable Speaker, sugarcane farmers, specifically in the Nzoia Sugar Belt, have not been paid for the deliveries made for the last 14 months. As we deliberate on this bill, Honorable Speaker, the employees of Nzoia Sugar Company, which is domiciled in my constituency, have not been paid for the last 16 months. Where did the rain begin beating us? The rain began beating us, Honorable Speaker, in my view, when we repealed the Sugar Act and enacted the AFA Act that introduced the AFA board to take charge of the sugar together with all the other crops. Why do we say this? Previously, when we had the Sugar Act, we had the Kenya Sugar Board that had representation of all the farmers in the sugar growing areas who were actually agitating and pushing the issues touching on the sugarcane farmers. We replaced it with a sugar directorate. This sugar directorate has been of great disservice to farmers because it neither agitates, it neither focuses, it neither propagates, it neither represents the interests of the sugar farmers. It is heartening to know that in the new bill which we have now brought, which is being deliberated on tonight, we have brought back the Kenya Sugar Board, which is going to be a farmer's voice. The farmers have been denied a voice in the current legal framework that is there, that actually, if you look at the Crops Act, sugarcane is not defined as a crop under the Crops Act. So we have basically pigeonholed sugar matters in a sugar directorate which does not actually serve farmers. Two, when the Sugar Act used to be there, we used to have the Sugar Development Levy, which is being introduced in this particular act. What was the Sugar Development Levy doing? It was being used to fund farmers' activities. It was being used to do loans to farmers, to outgrow institutions. It was used to fund many activities that were in the actual sugar sector. The commodities fund does not serve the interests of the sugarcane farmer at all. So it's gratifying, Honorable Speaker, that we are now seeking to bring back the Sugar Development Levy, which will be a critical funding element that will be able to fund activities in the sugar industry, which is a very good element. Equally, this act is proposing to bring back the Sugar Fund. The Sugar Fund is a critical element that will be able to assist us to fund activities in the sugar sector so that we can really be able to move. Honorable Speaker,
The sugar industry has also been bedeviled by cheap imports. We find right now sugar companies are not milling, but you will go to our supermarkets and you will find sugar branded Nzoia sugar. You will go to supermarkets and find sugar branded Mumias sugar. This is because the government has allowed sugar barons to be able to import sugar cheaply to the detriment of our sugar industry. So much so that the farmers are not getting what is the value of their sweat. This particular sugar bill introduces a licensing mechanism on who should be able to import sugar. And we will be proposing amendments in the committee of the whole house that when it comes to sugar importation, quotas should be given to the millers themselves to be able to import sugar than the sugar barons who are now making a kill from importing cheap sugar at the expense of our farmers. When we look at governance issues, specifically in public sugar factories, we have serious governance issues in our public sugar industry, sugar factories. We have bloated workforce, and like it was lately pointed out by the move of this particular motion, it has been used as a political tool to the detriment of the farmer, who is the goose that lays the golden eggs. Honorable Speaker, we will want and we will be making proposals in the committee of the whole house to ensure that the farmer's voice is heard and that there is orderliness in this particular sector so that we can be able to see what we can be, how we can be able to assist our farmers. One of the critical things which is also affecting our public sugar mills is the usage of obsolete and old technology. I give an example of Nzoia Sugar, which is using technology or a mill that was installed in 1978. Right now, if that mill breaks down, you cannot get spare parts. And a lot of funds are being used to literally service those mills, those mills, which actually are obsolete. So this particular, with a new legal regime, I think we'll have a new legal comprehensive framework that will be able to breathe life into our sugar industry so that our farmers can be able to reap what they are entitled. Honorable Speaker, in the interest of time, because many other honorable members want to weigh up on this, I will be urging this House that we move with speed to ensure that we pass this bill so that we can move it to the next level, so that the poor farmers of Nzoia Sugar, the poor children who can't go to school, the poor employees of Nzoia Sugar who have not been paid for the last 16 months can be able to have a reprieve. And at this particular juncture, I wish also to thank the government for putting a stop to what was going on, that they wanted to privatize these public sugar factories. These public sugar factories are enacted on land that was donated by the locals as leaders. We will never allow any privatization of any public mills that were actually put up by the people. And we also thank the mover also for giving the county government a role to play up in this. When we move up agriculture is a devolved function, but initially the county governments were not being involved particularly in extension services. If we look at this particular act, we will see there's a clear-cut role that's given to the county governments to be able to play a critical role in terms of extension services so that our people can be able to be. Honorable Speaker, I support wholeheartedly. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable James Nyika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, sugar is an important commodity in our development and in our country. In our policy, we say we need to have self-sufficiency, but we actually have the capacity to export. But look at where we are now. We are importing at a very high cost, something we can produce. In our policy, we sit on an agent of employment. But look at what has happened. In all the areas, the young men, all the sugar growing areas, the young men who are happily employed are all unemployed now. Sugarcane farmers are actually poor. They can't take their kids to school. They can't even treat themselves when they are sick. And yet, we have the capacity. It is a great product for development. Mr. Speaker, if you looked at the areas that produce sugar in the area at the time when sugar was flourishing, places like Mumias, Muhoroni, Miwani, Soni, Mr. Speaker, these areas were flourishing. You had infrastructure. The roads were good. They had schools. They had hospitals. Actually, some of the best schools. What has happened now? This all has now gone. You had markets. If you went to Mumias, places like Shibale, all these places were actually flourishing. Even Miwani, you looked at the markets there, they were flourishing. All that has actually now died, and there's unemployment, there is poverty in the area, and Mr. Speaker, this came as a result of changing the law and the liberation that we brought. In my view, the barons actually took advantage of the liberation and literally killed the industry so that they can import at a higher profit to themselves. Mr. Speaker, they killed the outgrowers cooperatives. I remember I had a friend in the outgrower. They generated terrible wars. They even came with things like outsourcing transport. I can tell you, my own brother who follows me died in Mumias because of the corruption in sugar, where the people wanted to actually record higher tonnage than they actually brought in. They used to call him a wizard because when he was on duty, the production of sugar per ton was very high, and people used to ask why. The reason was simple. What they are doing, you bring 50 tons, they record 200 tons. So literally, the production per ton is terrible. They just actually ran over him with the tractor. So that is the level of corruption that we had at that time. Therefore, it is extremely important that we go back and have regulation to provide, to revive and protect the industry. Now, Speaker, look at now what's happening. Now we have stopped the crushing because we don't have sugar. But can I tell you what's going to happen? The barons are going to import so much sugar that when now you have the canes, you will have nowhere to sell them. And they do that purposely. You know, we had the crisis that actually affected the cabinet secretary in Treasury at the time about sugar importation. They came with an idea that there is going to be a drought and therefore you need sugar. They were given just a little leeway. They imported more than 10 years worth of sugar in a short time, blocked everybody out. They couldn't even store it. The story is still going on with the contamination. So this, we have to regulate this. So Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. It has all the structures that we need. The sugar board, the members are actually the stakeholders, the farmers. They see it differently. The representatives of various areas, they know this is their own, not people who see it as an employment. Then the licensing and registration of millers and jaggeries. You can't have anybody walking in and saying, I'm a miller of jaggery. How do you manage that? This provides for that. So look at this bill provides for research. You know, we're still dealing with sugar which you harvest after 18 months. Many places in the world, they now have sugar that is actually being harvested in a year. So Mr. Speaker, these are things we need to. We have crop inspectors here, so that once you have the correct sugar, the correct cane that you want, and you train the farmers and you tell them what to do, I mean, you will have what you need. We have established, it has established tribunal. There are a lot of disputes in the sugar industry, so we need that. Then you have the development fund to support the farmers. The ownership of factories are actually regulated and by farmers themselves. And so there are, the way you have agreements, there are ways laid down for having agreements. Mr. Speaker, I support this, and lastly, let me say, we must move and actually classify sugar as a food. I think it will take us a long way. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, let's be apprising. It's a bill that has attracted a lot of attention, and the honorable members who have spoken on this, I'm sure they'll speak on it next time, beginning with Honorable Salasia, who I'm told had equally a similar bill. Honorable members, Mheshimiwa Nyikao, you still have a balance of time for 4 minutes. That is if you are not through. And take note of that. Honorable members, and the time being 9 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Thursday, 17th August 2023 at 2:30 p.m.